What's good with YouTube? You already know. Big Flacco, the convict's perspective, ACP, pushing that hard line, hoping everybody's having a positive, productive day. On board with another banger. But before we get to this, man, please hit the like, subscribe, comment, do all those things to help support your boy, and hit that bell notification for future fire content. As you can tell by the title and thumbnail, we're going to talk about the history of Norteno rap, what went right, what went wrong. But first, let me do a quick disclaimer. This history video isn't so much about who the first Norteno rappers were and what sequence of events, but I'm going to talk about the key events, some of the key issues that were going on during that time, and the things that I was aware of. Remember, this is Northern California. Not everything was everybody privileged to, right? But there were some key events that did happen that I was either a part of or knew firsthand information because of who I was associated with at that time. And a lot of shit was going on during this time era, trust me. So let's get to it. Now, I don't know exactly who the first Norteno rapper was, right? But there were some previously, before I went to prison, I used to hear about PBC, Proud by Choice, Darkroom Familia, and a few others, right, that were underground. Now, I go to prison in the 90s, and that's when it started to blow up. There was the 17 Reasons with Northside Soldier with the Gold Toes and Mousy. Then there was Norte Sidon by Woody. Then you had Norteno and them, who came out with the GUN CD. Now, prior to me getting out, a CD came out called GUN, Generations of United Norteños, which was pretty much Juanito's project. Now, he came out under Cuete, Rubalcaba, right, with a lot of directives, and one of which was to establish basically pushing out a CD about unity, carnalismo, and to pretty much take out the opposition. Before this CD came out, it was around the time when El Norte Law came out, Red on Red, and the new directives that were coming from headquarters, from Brass at that time. And this was pretty much for one goal and one goal only, to get the Northerners under the bandera, 100% in unity, to contribute for percentages of money and whatnot. They were using this as a control mechanism to control the Norteños that were out there in the streets and to get them more involved in NF activities. Now, Juanito was under investigation at this time for a numerous amount of violations, one being misappropriation of funds that were generated from the GUN CD, Brass claiming that they never got anything from Juanito. And then Norteno and Darkroom Familia saying that they never got nothing from Juanito. See, Juanito pretty much bullied his way in out there in the streets and found Dino basically as his head representative behind this CD. But lo and behold, a lot of people, Juanito was basically just using these individuals. They didn't get no income or no money for doing this. All Dino ended up getting was an indictment based upon it. Mencho from Sanjo was actually sent out to find Juanito, right, and to see where the money was going, to which Juanito offered, I think, Lencho like 10,000 CDs or 7,000 CDs, saying that they haven't made any money yet, but was all bullshit. Now, prior to Juanito defecting and working with the feds, he was already being told to report directly to Spider or Unhappy at that time. See, because of his handling of the GUN CD, as well as the situation with Brown Bob, aka Cafe, which he was supposed to be part of handling that issue, he was basically this close to being whacked out there in the streets. In fact, he was going to eventually get whacked. But he ended up cooperating first. He knew it was coming, pretty much. Now, 17 Reasons, right, and GUN pretty much opened the doors for people like Woody and, you know what I'm saying, Speedy Lope, and all these other rappers who just came out of nowhere, hard on the scene. The Valley was one of the main hotspots, because besides Darkroom Familia, you had those that were working with Lowdown, and Lowdown and Darkroom Familia had a relationship at that time. Around that same time, there was a record label out there in Santa Rosa by an individual named Paco, who was working with the feds, that the feds were basically funding, you know, these endeavors with this record label. They were having people go in to record, and recording all the conversations that were transpiring in this room. So basically, the feds had a record label, that they had someone that was a dropout working with them that helped build cases during Operation Black Widow, which was Paco from Santa Rosa. And I want to say it was North Star Records. It was something like that, man, but this is way back in the days. Now, as I get out, there's been a lot of activities going on. You had the Gold Toes and Black and Brown, 17 Reasons, and 18 with a Bullet out there in Frisco. You had Norteno in the Valley, and, you know what I'm saying, and then Lowdown, right, at that time, that were all doing big things. In the Bay Area, you had Speedy Lopes, right? So you had rappers pretty much everywhere. Then in San Jose, you had Gato, Mas Loco. Now, prior to Operation Black Widow, Gato started having a working relationship with the regiment, with Goose and Chico Rose. Now, they started a label called Big Things Entertainment at that time, right? Which was supposed to be the record label for all the homeboys. That was the whole goal. He had already recruited Tiny Lokes from Merced, who was on the GUN CD, and he had recruited Toxteto. Now, if you guys remember, there was a track called Big Things Soldados, right? And in that track, you have Drew Toxteto say, "Give him way more than your average hood contributions." See, this was supposed to be the label of the people that had the backing of the organization. Shortly thereafter, when Black Widow happened, is when all the shit came to a head with Sir Dino and Dr. Familia. Okay, I remember the orders came out to locate Sir Dino because he failed to show up for a court appearance, and it was to make sure that he wasn't wearing a wire. And after days of looking for him, the homie Steve finally found him and was able to have a meeting with him right there in Tracy, California, right inside a restaurant. He made sure that he had him, Oso, and Dino. They were in the bathroom and they all kind of stripped to make sure that nobody was wearing a wire, and they had the conversation. I remember that week, I went to Gato's baby shower, and Charlie Campo was there. Now, we were all the ones that were doing things for San Jose on behalf of Brass at that time. And we were taking care of a lot of issues that were outside of San Jose because we had well-established contacts. And Charlie showed me that he had Dino's number, that he was going to be talking to him soon and shit. And we were talking about it, right? You know, shortly thereafter, Dino came down to Morgan Hill, and that's where he was pretty much blindsided by Gato and them about some contributions and some things that they wanted him to do. And, you know, Dino was just put in a bad position because he was pretty much set up, brought over there, and here comes Gato out of nowhere. And they were pretty much trying to fucking extort Dino at that time, because those are what the directors were. We're taking trips from all the way out to Merced, right, with the homie Steve to go drop off from work to Never, who was the one that was running low down at that time. He lived right there, I think, off Martin Luther King, right by the railroads, like directly right next to him in a small apartment complex. And I met Never a few times therefore after. Now, at that time, Brass wanted every rapper that was making any money out there to start contributing, and that's what the motto was out there in the streets. Now, Gato at one time had a chance to be the one record that was supported by Brass, right? But when he went MIA to Texas and abandoned the regiment, he was deemed no good at one time, which he was later cleared once they produced a fine that he had to pay. He was cleared after he paid that fine. Now, there was a lot of confusion at that time because a lot of previous regiment commanders were told to abandon their channels and plug directly in with Brass, who at that time were in Oakland. This is where a lot of people fell off at that time. Okay, so therefore there was redirections out there to recontact every major rapper that was representing Norte. Now, there was a stale period with the homeboy rap music for a short period of time, right? And this was around the time when we were doing some things out there in San Jose, and you know, the one that was working hand in hand with me was actually a rapper as well from San Jose, and he ended up being the one that was opening up for Victor Saragosa in the Oldie Show on the weekends, if you guys remember. This was around 2002, 2003, and I remember this when we were working for Salinas, and I remember Bubba reached out to me and said, "Hey, can you help me out? I got two rappers, one from the Bahamas and one from fucking Casitas." And we were supposed to move on a project at that time, but shortly thereafter, Bubba got locked up, and then I got locked up. Now, this is around the time Stars the Limit blew up, Tito B, Speedy Lokes. Then you had Big Oso down there in Fremont. And, you know, rap music, the homeboy rap music started to take a different turn, you know. It was mainly at this point Woody and, you know, the East Bay and then San Fran, and the Valley kind of died out a little bit. And a lot of that was due to the indictment with Sir Dino. And a lot of rappers started to stay away a little bit because of, you know, being pressed up on to contribute. And some of these rappers were not even making a fucking dollar, but nobody understood that at this time. Now, with the rap scene at that time, you had Frisco. They had all those San Francisco rappers that were tapped in, man. You know, Tone Loc, Mousy, you know, Gold Toes, Mr. Key, all those cats out that way. Then you had the East Bay. Then you still had the Valley going, right? But, you know, the San Fran was tapped in where they needed to be tapped in. And see, at that time, the East Bay was reporting to Salinas, okay? Now, this is where I stepped into it with a project potentially that was going to happen, okay? Because I had made contact with Salinas, who was in contact with an individual named Mo Cardenas from Fremont. Now, Mo was tapped into all these rappers because I believe his daughter, you know, is a very well-known artist people know, right? Female. Okay, so he taps me in with Frederico from homeboyrap.com, who was doing videos. Now, I had a meeting with Frederico at the 7-Eleven right there off Irvington and Columbus. I told Frederico that I had permission to pretty much meet with anybody in Northern California that was rapping and to get them on board to put together a compilation, which was to get some rappers that were basically working with the regiment at that time in different areas, to get them on with some known rappers as far as homeboy wise, to get on the tracks and to pretty much put it out there. And that's where he tapped me in with Oso and a couple other cats, and it was all supposed to be put together, you know what I mean? It was, I told him I wanted it to be something like G-Win, but not with that kind of attention to it as far as gang style wise. I wanted it just to be rappers that were homeboys and pretty much just, you know, promote a positive message and carnalismo, and to stay away from anything that was going to bring any type of heat or attention from law enforcement, and that we were going to fund it, and that I had permission basically, and that this would go a long ways as far as anybody in the future trying to get at him for contributions. See, since he was more on the video side of things and was in contact with all the rappers from different areas, I wanted him to be the main point of contact as far as regarding this project. Unless it was those that he couldn't get a hold of, and that if there was anybody that he had any problems with that tried to say no just to get at me, because they were going to quickly have to say yes. Pretty much we were going to press up on them if we had to. I already got a few confirmations from like Woody and a few others that they were going to get on the track for us in regards to this production that we were putting together. But like everything, a few of us got caught up and it never got to get the traction that it needed. But at one time I was in communication, like I said, with Mo and Frederico and a few other people on putting this project together. And at that time, the marketing was basically done through you know, self-promotion. There was no distributors that were helping out at that time, you know. So, you know, the rap scene in LA was pretty much, you know, getting all the attention with Criminal, Capone, and all those cats, you know, and then Little Rob, of course, in San Diego. But homeboys were not known until Woody got signed by Coach Records. A lot of these rappers that you hear about now that are more old school, I'll tell you right now, they had to work 9 to 5s to make it, just to get studio time or to get up in there. It was not easy. There was nobody who had really made it and was making any money besides Woody at that time, and it really wasn't that much. And all these homeboy rappers, all they knew was once they started to get a little bit of success, there was somebody coming that was representing the NF or the regiment that was there to fucking tax them. This was a routine that was going on in circles, and nobody had yet to make it yet. Now, Gotos has been a factor throughout this all. I'm going to tell you right now, he gave the blueprint to a lot of homeboys on how to get this stuff done and how to keep the big homies happy. Straight up. Because nobody was going to do anything and be successful without contributing. That's a given, okay? But once the organization started letting these guys go about their business and quit trying to get their, you know, intervene too early or try to get themselves in the mix, is when you started to see, you know, these independent rappers that were Nortenos that were starting to have success. From Backpack Boys to Cartel Clothing, you know, these other outlets that were, you know, tied in with the music industry, right, were able to take their business level to a whole different level. Success at Rico Too Smooth and GB and Acito and Lazy Boy, all these rappers are having was the hard work that all these individuals put in to be where they're at today. Straight up. A lot of sacrificing was done, right? A lot of struggles. But the end game has been pretty good for a lot of these rappers nowadays from Northern California. On top of the, you know, like I said, Northern Organized Records in Mexico, you know, which was basically, we already know, the big homies are pretty much funding that project, and they got a big homie running that project. They've been successful. Now, if you notice, I've kept Cocoa County Records pretty much out of this kind of spill to a certain extent, only where necessary, because like I said, they had a lot of rappers that came out of there with talent, well known, right? But they also had a lot of internal issues that were going on. Some's known to the public, some is not known, and some should just remain private, in my opinion. Therefore, I'm not going to really discuss them. But Big Tone and, you know, even AWACS, even though he wasn't a homeboy rapper, he rolled with the homeboys. You know what I'm saying? But they were also, like I said, figureheads to the Norteno rap music. Woody was one of the biggest contributors there is. You know, so, as is Gotos and Sir Dino. Then you have Speedy Loke and Tito B and Like I said, there's a lot of different people who contributed to the homeboy music, right? Some more tapped in than others. Some just faded away, and some remained. There's been a few setbacks along the way. You know, Woody taking his life was a big setback, and there's a lot of let's just say conspiracy and some issues surrounding it. Okay, Gangsta Flea in his crazy case, man, he's set to come home, I think, anytime now if he's not already home. Tito B and Speedy Loke no longer here. You know, basically we're pioneers in the East Bay rap scene. But the Valleys came out hot with a whole new stream of rappers from Rico Too Smooth, GB, Acito, Young Cinco, all these cats, man. They can all rap hard, man. You got bands at the Rose. And some of the old school Frisco rappers are still in the scene, man. You know, that are still there years later, man. Nowadays, though, everybody's in the position to have greater success outside of just their rap game. If you just stick just to rapping, you're not going to make it. You have to put your fucking income, diversify it. Like GB started a store and stuff like that. That's why these guys are able to make it long term. You know, associating themselves or attaching themselves to things like, you know, Backpack Boys or Cartel Money. Those things have been the best interest of all these rappers and have helped them grow the most doing these things. Now, for the most part, all rappers, regardless of where they're from, are pretty much tapped in a little bit. You know, a lot more carnalismo. You know, back then it was the building stages of carnalismo, and, you know, a lot of times, you know, just showing up, you know, asking for that contribution for doing homeboy music rubbed a lot of people wrong. But they complied only because they had to. So now you got Thizzler, you got, what, Shimo Media, whatever it is, right? You got all these different outlets, man, that have actually helped, you know, Norteno rap excel. Like, look how many rappers there is now today compared to back then, man. Back then you only had a handful that were really talented, you know, but you had the labels and the people behind certain individuals that made them more attractive, let's just say. I'm going to tell you guys right now, without Goldtoe's contribution and the things that he's done for the rap game, for the Northern Raza, a lot of what's going on today would not be going on. He wrote, I'm not going to say he wrote the template or blueprint, but he sure showed it to everybody. And when people have done what he's done, matched with that energy, they've been successful. See, in the early years, a lot of these rappers weren't accounted for, right? Therefore, anybody was showing up at their doorstep. Once they got smart, you know, after Operation Valley Star, a lot of them just started to find someone that could hold them accounted for, basically. And it allowed them to operate freely. And that's why you're seeing the success that you're seeing now. And that's why you're seeing the relationships that you're seeing now. It was all a work in the progress. Along the way, there's been a lot of crazy stuff that's happened. You know, Goldtoe's almost got green-lighted a couple times. Little Kona got 2 passes. He almost got green-lighted. You know, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that if people knew, they'd be fucking shocked at how much money makes people move and how decisions are made based upon that. It was kind of interesting, right? You know who owns the rights to the GUN CDs? None other than Never From Lowdown. You know where Never From Lowdown is originally from? Los Angeles. Anyway, some of the best homeboy rappers, man, are the ones that never even made it out that are still doing time in prison, believe it or not. Those that have made it or paved the way, man, you know, much respect, man. And those that are now doing their thing, don't forget where you come from, man. Don't forget the sacrifices that were made by others in the past. Even if these dudes are in good standings or in bad standings, there was a lot of sacrifices that went forth. It was not easy being a homeboy rapper in the 90s and early 2000s. Especially in the early 2000s when Operation Black Widow hit and they were telling, locate every fucking rapper in Northern California that's doing anything and tax them. That's pretty much what the directives were. Everybody's going to have to pay. It didn't matter what they thought you was making, but sometimes a problem. I said this isn't a, you know, perfect history outline as far as exact dates of who started things first or all that, but this is just some of the stuff that happened along the ways. Like I said, there's stuff that happened in different areas, you know, like everybody knows about the Big Cholo situation, the stuff that was going on with Blackbird and, you know, Woody and Snoop and all that. And I'm not going to touch on any of those issues, man. Some of the stuff that was going on in San Fran, as well as stuff that was going on in San Jose. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff, but there are key things that happened that kind of changed the direction in which the Norteno rap went. Nowadays, they're seeing much more success. They're making money, and they have businesses now. You know, much respects, because that was always the goal from the beginning. But too often you had those that weren't rappers, weren't managers, producers, or nothing, that were trying to involve themselves too much in the mix. Now rappers are showing up on podcasts down in LA, which is going to change a lot of stuff now, because a lot more, attention is going to be shown on Norteño rappers now. You know what I'm saying? So I'm interested to see where this leads them 5 years from today. With that said, I'm gone.